Dear viewers, the following stories are inspired by real events. However, the names of the characters have been changed to protect privacy. Story 1. Whispers Among the Lilacs. Liam, whose real name was Ethan, a college student, went with his girlfriend Olivia to the Rochester Lilac Festival in Highland Park in May 2018. The overwhelming, captivating fragrance of thousands of lilac blossoms in every color imaginable filled the air, blending with the lively music and the chatter of the bustling crowd. Liam and Olivia decided to explore a quieter area of the park. Away from the noisy throng, they followed a winding path lined with towering lilac bushes, leading them to a more secluded, wooded area near ancient trees. As they passed a large, old oak tree with sprawling branches, Liam suddenly noticed a young girl in a white dress standing alone at its base. She looked about 7 or 8 years old, with long black hair cascading down her back, and her white dress appeared slightly old and soiled at the hem. Amidst the brightly dressed festival goers, she looked truly out of place and lonely. Liam gently pointed her out to Olivia, and they approached, thinking she might be lost or separated from her parents. The girl was facing away from them, seemingly looking up at the high branches. As they got closer, Liam called out softly, "Hello?" The girl didn't respond, nor did she turn around. They noticed the hem of her white dress looked slightly damp, as if it had just been dipped in water. A strange feeling flickered within Liam. Olivia also tried calling out, but the girl remained still. Liam noticed the girl's long, dark hair was tangled and matted. They got even closer, and as the girl slowly turned around, both Liam and Olivia were startled by her pale, gaunt face and her wide, unblinking eyes that seemed to hold an ancient sadness. The girl didn't speak, only stared silently at Liam and Olivia with an intense, chilling gaze. Suddenly, they felt the temperature around them drop noticeably. The girl slowly raised a thin, pale hand and pointed towards a specific spot at the base of the oak tree, where the ground looked disturbed. Liam felt an overwhelming sense of unease and asked softly, "Are you okay?" The girl remained silent, her eyes fixed on them. Olivia started to feel scared and suggested they should leave, but Liam felt a strange curiosity and a compelling urge to understand what was happening. As they hesitated, the girl took a step closer, and they noticed a faint, sweet, cloying scent, like decaying flowers, wafting from her. Suddenly, the expression on the girl's face changed to one of terror, and she mouthed a single word that they could barely hear: "Run." Before they could react, a dark shadow seemed to flicker behind the girl, and a low, guttural growl echoed through the trees. The ghostly girl screamed, a sound that was both chilling and heartbreaking. And then she vanished into thin air right before their eyes. Liam and Olivia were terrified and immediately turned to run back towards the main festival area. They could still hear the faint growling sound behind them. As they ran, they stumbled upon an old, overgrown section of the park they hadn't noticed before. There were several dilapidated stone structures and a sense of damp decay in the air. They found an old, forgotten cemetery hidden amongst the overgrown bushes and trees. Many of the headstones were broken or illegible. They noticed one grave in particular that looked older than the others, with the name Eliza and the dates 1898 to 1908 etched into the stone. There was a small, faded photograph of a girl in a white dress attached to it. Liam remembered hearing local stories about a young girl named Eliza who had tragically died in an accident in Highland Park around the turn of the 20th century. Suddenly, They heard the low growling sound again. Closer this time. They saw a dark, shadowy figure moving among the trees in the distance. They realized the ghostly girl had been trying to warn them about something else. Something darker and more malevolent. They tried to leave the cemetery, but the shadowy figure seemed to be blocking their path. They heard a faint, childlike sob carried on the wind. The shadowy figure began to take a more defined form, and they saw it was a tall, gaunt man with an angry, twisted face. He started to move towards them, and they could hear the dragging sound of chains on the ground. They realized this was the true malevolent presence haunting the park. They desperately tried to find a way out of the cemetery as the shadowy figure grew closer. Olivia tripped and fell, and the figure reached out a skeletal hand towards her. Liam grabbed Olivia's hand and pulled her up, and they managed to escape the cemetery, running as fast as they could back towards the lights and crowds of the festival. They never looked back, but they could still feel the chilling presence of the shadowy figure and the sad, warning gaze of the girl in the white dress. They later learned more about the history of Highland Park and discovered that a groundskeeper named Silas, whose real name was Arthur, known for his violent temper, had murdered a young girl named Eliza in the park in the early 1900s and buried her in an unmarked grave near the old oak tree. The shadowy figure they saw was likely the vengeful spirit of Silas. Story 2. White dress on Festival Street. Sarah, whose real name was Abigail, a local resident, attended the lively Ithaca Festival in downtown Ithaca, New York, in June 2015. The weather was warm, the sun shone brightly, and the air was filled with music, laughter, and the aroma of countless craft stalls and delicious food. Sarah happily mingled with the crowd, enjoying the vibrant festival atmosphere. After wandering around for a while, Sarah wanted to find a quieter place to rest. She turned onto a small, deserted side street, away from the main festival area, near a small park shaded by trees. Under an old willow tree, its branches drooping like green hair, Sarah suddenly saw a young girl in a white dress standing alone. The girl looked about 6 or 7 years old, with light blonde hair neatly tied back, and her white dress appeared slightly old and had a few faint stains on the hem. Amidst the casually dressed festival goers, she looked truly lonely and out of place. Sarah approached, intending to ask if the girl needed help. As she got closer, she called out softly, "Hello?" The girl didn't answer, nor did she turn around. Sarah noticed the girl was looking down at the ground, as if searching for something. Sarah called out again, a little louder, "Sweetheart, are you okay?" The girl remained still. Sarah noticed the girl's small hands were clutching an old rag doll, its face worn and with a small tear on its cheek. Sarah stepped closer and gently touched the girl's shoulder. The girl startled and turned around. Her face was pale, her deep blue eyes wide with fear as she looked at Sarah. A long, thin scar ran along her left temple. The girl didn't speak, just stared at Sarah with a sad and worried gaze. Suddenly, Sarah felt an icy chill run down her spine. Even though the weather was still warm, the girl slowly raised her small hand and pointed towards a nearby dark and damp alleyway. The alley looked narrow and dirty, with overflowing trash cans and stained brick walls. Sarah felt a sense of unease rising within her. She asked softly, "Do you need help with something?" The girl remained silent, her eyes fixed on the alley. Just then, a group of Sarah's friends walked by and called out to her. Sarah turned to wave, and when she looked back, the girl in the white dress had vanished without a trace. Sarah told her friends about the strange encounter, but they just laughed and suggested she had imagined it. However, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. The cold feeling and the girl's sad eyes haunted her thoughts. Later that evening, after the festival had wound down, Sarah and her friends walked back home through the Ithaca Commons. As they passed the old willow tree, Sarah suddenly saw a white object lying on the ground beneath the tree. It was the old rag doll the girl had been holding. Sarah bent down and picked up the doll. As soon as she touched it, she felt an icy coldness and heard a faint whisper in her ear, "He's still there." Sarah gasped in terror and dropped the doll back onto the ground. She told her friends what she had just heard, and now they were starting to feel uneasy as well. They decided to research the history of the area around the Ithaca Commons. They found old newspaper articles online about a horrific crime that had occurred in the 1980s. A young girl named Lily, whose real name was Bethany, had gone missing after attending the festival and was later found murdered in a nearby alleyway. The white dress Lily was wearing when she disappeared matched the dress the ghostly girl had worn. They also learned that the alleyway the girl had pointed to Sarah was the very place where Lily's body had been discovered. They realized the ghostly girl Sarah had met was likely Lily's spirit, trying to communicate with them and perhaps warn them about something. They decided to return to the alleyway the next day. The alley was still dark and damp, with a heavy, ominous atmosphere. They found a small, makeshift memorial for Lily near the entrance of the alley, with faded flowers and a small, worn rag doll identical to the one Sarah had found. Suddenly, they heard a low, menacing chuckle coming from deep within the alley. They felt a cold, malevolent presence nearby. They tried to leave, but they felt an unseen force holding them back. The chuckle grew louder, closer. They saw a dark, shadowy figure at the end of the alley, its form indistinct but clearly malevolent. The figure began to move towards them, and they heard a faint dragging sound, as if something heavy was being pulled along the ground. Sarah remembered reading in the newspaper articles that Lily's killer, a man named Arthur, whose real name was Ronald, had never been caught and was rumored to have dragged her body into the alley. The shadowy figure reached them, and they felt an icy grip on their arms. They screamed in terror as the figure's face came into focus, a twisted, evil visage with cold, dead eyes. They managed to break free and ran screaming from the alley, back into the crowded streets of the festival. They never looked back, forever haunted by the image of the ghostly girl and the malevolent presence in the dark alleyway. They later learned that the alleyway had a long history of strange occurrences and unexplained phenomena, and some locals believed it was haunted by both Lily and her uncaptured killer. Story 3. White Shadow Amidst Music in Mountains. Mark, whose real name was Andrew, a music enthusiast, attended the Rendezvous Music Festival in Jackson Hole, Wyoming, in April 2016. He was excited about the headlining acts and the vibrant atmosphere of the festival, set against the majestic backdrop of the Teton Mountains. While trying to navigate the crowded festival grounds to get closer to the main stage, Mark got separated from his group of friends. He decided to take a detour through a slightly less congested area at the edge of the festival, near a wooded section. There, he saw a young girl in a white dress standing alone near a cluster of aspen trees. She looked out of place compared to the other festival attendees. Mark approached, thinking she might be lost or need help. The girl was facing away from him, seemingly looking out towards the distant mountains. As he got closer, Mark called out softly, "Hello? The girl didn't reply, nor did she turn around. Mark noticed her white dress looked old-fashioned and had a few tears and dirt stains. He called out again, a little louder, but the girl remained still. Her long, dark hair was tangled and gently blowing in the wind. Mark stepped closer and gently touched the girl's shoulder. She turned around slowly, revealing a pale, gaunt face with wide, vacant eyes that seemed to stare right through him. The girl didn't speak, only looked at Mark with an expression of profound sadness. Suddenly, Mark felt an inexplicable chill despite the warm spring sunshine. The girl slowly raised a thin, pale hand and pointed towards a steep, rocky trail leading up into the nearby woods. Mark felt a growing sense of unease and asked softly, "Are you okay?" The girl remained silent, her eyes fixed on the trail. Just then, the music from the main stage swelled, momentarily drowning out any other sounds. When the music faded slightly, Mark realized the girl was no longer there. Mark felt a strange pull towards the trail the girl had pointed to. He hesitated for a moment but then decided to follow it, curious about what the girl wanted to show him. As he walked along the rocky path, the sounds of the festival gradually faded behind him. The air grew colder, and the trees became denser. He came across a small, dilapidated wooden cabin hidden amongst the trees. It looked abandoned and had an air of decay about it. He cautiously approached the cabin and peered through a broken window. Inside, he saw old, dusty furniture and a child's rocking horse lying on its side. As Mark looked around the cabin, he noticed a faint scratching sound coming from the back. He cautiously walked around the cabin and found a partially collapsed shed. He peered inside the shed and saw a shallow grave that had been recently disturbed. A small, white dress lay crumpled at the edge of the grave. Mark felt a wave of nausea and horror wash over him. He realized the girl he had seen at the festival was likely a ghost, and this might be her final resting place. Suddenly, he heard a twig snap behind him. He turned around quickly and saw the ghostly figure of the girl standing at the edge of the woods, looking directly at him with an expression of terror. Before Mark could react, a dark, shadowy figure emerged from behind the trees. It was a tall, gaunt man with a menacing aura. The ghostly girl screamed and pointed frantically at the man. Mark realized the shadowy figure must be connected to the girl's death. He felt a sense of danger and started to back away slowly. The shadowy figure began to move towards Mark, and he could hear a faint, chilling whisper carried on the wind, seemingly coming from the figure. Mark turned and ran back down the trail as fast as he could. The terrifying images of the grave and the shadowy figure burned into his mind. He didn't stop running until he reached the crowded festival grounds, where the noise and lights offered a sense of safety. He told his friends what he saw, and they were understandably shaken. They later researched the history of the area and discovered an old news report about a young girl named Emily, whose real name was Jessica, who went missing from a nearby campground during a music festival many years ago. Her body was never found, but the description of her clothing matched the white dress. They also found local legends about a disturbed hermit, whose real name was Samuel, who used to live in the woods near where Mark found the cabin and was suspected of being involved in Emily's disappearance. The shadowy figure Mark saw likely belonged to this hermit. Mark and his friends never looked at the Rendezvous Music Festival the same way again, forever haunted by the memory of the ghostly girl and the sinister presence in the woods. Hopefully this true story has brought you some thrilling and creepy moments. If you like horror stories, real ghosts like this, Don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next videos. Goodbye and see you again.